Today, we're going to talk about why it is you might not be growing on Instagram, right? Which is incredibly frustrating. So I'm going to share with you the 7 most common mistakes, reasons why you might not be growing. The average social media user is trying to follow fewer people because they find that they're overwhelmed. They're trying to consume less content. How many of you are trying to consume more content or less content? Most people are trying to consume less content because they've got a lot to do. They want to move their business forward. They want to create their own content. So they're trying to consume less content. It can make us feel very chaotic and it can make us feel overwhelmed. And so I'm telling you this because you shouldn't be beating yourself up if your Instagram just isn't growing at the pace it maybe once did, or even at the pace that we once saw Instagram accounts growing very fast, right? And that is because, frankly, supply and demand. There's a huge supply and the demand is lower. We're starting to realize, I don't want to consume as much content. What does that mean for you? It means you can't afford to be making any of these mistakes. It means you have to have things buttoned up because even if people see your content, they're not always guaranteed they're going to follow you. But we want to have you to get on their radar. We want them to just take a second look, to take a moment to say, is this person someone who I should follow? And even if we can get them to stay on even if they don't follow, you guys, this is what we know. Even if we can get them to look at your content a little longer, even if they don't follow, Instagram is likely to put your content in front of them again. And then you're more likely to get that follow. So let's make sure you're not making any of these mistakes so that we can safeguard your ability to get more follows, right? So here are the biggest mistakes. Number 1 is not having a clear niche. Now, I like to replace the word niche with subject because sometimes the word niche really freaks people out. They're like, my niche is this, but what I post about is this. I just mean, if it's not really clear to people, the general subject matter upon which you post about, it's just not going to get you a follow. It might have people watching your reel. It might have people looking at your content, but they're not likely going to follow. And this is really important. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes that we see people making. It's like step 1 of Instagram growth is picking a subject, picking a group of subjects that relate to one specific niche so people know the kind of content that you're good for. It becomes your brand. Yet 97% of our new ICH members have not picked a subject matter. They haven't picked a specific niche to post about. So what happens when we don't have a niche? And you've probably heard this before, but I want to reiterate it, that if you don't have a clear niche, but you've got a great piece of content, let's say you just posted up this incredible piece of content of you making a high protein, delicious dessert that you can whip up in 5 minutes. And this is what we do. We're like, oh, that looks so good. Oh my, I have such a sweet tooth and I'm having a hard time getting enough protein in. So now I'm going to go look at this person's page. And then when I go look at their page, what I'm seeing is a Mother's Day post with their mom. I'm also seeing a crafting project, and I'm seeing some beautiful pictures from their vacation. And also I'm seeing some reels where I can't even tell what it's about, but I'm looking at the thumbnail and I'm like, it doesn't seem like it's about food. I don't know. Maybe it is about food, but looking at the thumbnail, the cover art, doesn't look like it's about food. So you've got literally a split second for people to look at your page and say yes or no. And if I looked at your page and I don't see more of what I just saw, you're not getting a follow. But for most people, they're just not picking that. You haven't picked a subject matter. You're all over the place. Because niche is we find one of the hardest things for people to really decide, here's the thing I need to post about. Now let's talk about your profile setup, because this is probably the second biggest mistake that people make. And that is their profile isn't set up correctly. If you do a poor job of setting up your profile, when I find that piece of content, because this is how the follow happens. People see a piece of content. They're like, this is interesting. I would like to see more of this. They click on your profile and the first thing they look at is your photo and then your username, maybe. More importantly, they're looking at the name and title. Here on the screen, where it says over 50 health and fitness expert, this is my name and title. that is searchable. That also shows up. It doesn't say Chalene Johnson. If I send you a DM, it will say over 50 health and fitness expert. So if you're not following me, go to open up your phone, go to Instagram right now, and just send me a direct message. And I want you to see how my name shows up underneath me, under my image. What it is I post about shows up, and that's my niche. Now, underneath that is my bio. My bio needs to match the content that this person has just seen. Does that make sense? So if they've just seen a piece of content from me that is about snowboarding, right? They've just seen like me going through powder, and they're like, I want to follow more female snowboarders. So they go and look at my profile, and if they just read that what I post about is how to maintain your health, how to feel vibrant and energetic and build more muscle after 50, they're like, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for snowboarding content. So I'm not going to get a follow. So in other words, your content needs to align with your profile. Your profile is it's kind of reinforcing to people what it is that you post about. That is the only area that is searchable, the area where it is your name and title. By searchable, I mean search engine optimized. If you go to look at my profile, you see how I have put PIO, get more steps, reduce cellulite. I've put words over my thumbnails. Are you trying to attract people who are over 35? Because you have to remember, people are looking at your images on their phones, right? It's very, very tiny. So if I'm looking at just a video, I don't know what it's about. Make it really easy for people to glance at your page and know what the heck you post about. Do you see how big the words are over my thumbnails? It says knee pain, castor oil, the after party, more steps, collagen powder. Like you glance at my page and you're like, oh, this is all about health and fitness over 50. Right? Or health and fitness for any woman who wants to transition into that second stage of her life. So I highly recommend that you start using, simplify it. Now, if these are just all videos, work with me for a second. Are you following along? So what I'm asking for someone to do, if there's no thumbnail that tells you what the reel is about, if I'm not putting big, bold words across it like they do on YouTube, then I'm assuming someone has enough time to watch like 6 of my videos to figure out what subject matters I post about. No way. People don't have that kind of time. They don't care. People don't have time. They do not have time to do that kind of thing anymore. So it's really important you save people time so that at a quick glance, I can go like, oh, she talks about walking and fitness and getting more steps in and oil pulling and belly bloat, mobility. Okay, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. If I can't tell what you post about, I'm out. I'm busy. I'm already following too many people. Make it easy for people. Okay, the next biggest mistake that people make is just being completely inconsistent, right? And I get it. You know, I always say this when I do a training. I think what's more important than being consistent is your mental health. So if you're like, it's killing me, I can't post one more time this week, or, you know, it's between this and going to my son's graduation and enjoying it. Life is short. Like, people first, posting second. But if we're looking at why an account isn't growing, it's inconsistency. So the more consistently you post, and that also includes your stories right now. So we are seeing some kind of interesting, conflicting information about stories. We're seeing that some people are still getting a ton of traction by posting multiple times per day on their stories. And that I would be one of those people. And Brock is finding out, and so many of our other members who we've polled are finding that when they post less to their stories, they're getting a better view on their stories. But remember, views on your stories are only coming from people who already follow you. So if you're trying to grow, listen to what I'm about to say. I really need you to pay attention to this. If you're trying to grow on Instagram and you need to prioritize your time because you're only one person, you can only do so much, pop quiz. Which place is going to get you more followers? Posting to your stories or posting to your feed? You got to post to your feed. So I know this is true of me. Sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, it only takes me a second to post to my stories, but it doesn't. I got to look up the link. I got to I got to hit caption. I got to wait for it to transcribe, and it takes like 4 or 5 minutes, even just to post your stories sometimes. So I have to remind myself, like, okay, if my goal is to help and reach more people, if I want to make a bigger impact with women, then I need to think about how I'm using my time. And even though it feels easier to post to my stories, if I really want to reach new people, I've got to prioritize my time and maybe post less to my stories and more to my feed. And that's what I chose to do in the last 3 months. And my account went from stagnant. Like I could not grow from over 750 to save my life. And it's because I was posting a couple times a week. I wasn't prioritizing growth. Now I'm prioritizing growth, and I'm already at, I think, 811 as of today. Let's see. Yeah, 811. By the way, shameless plug for our Instagram coaching program. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend you check it out. We always have specials going on. I will put a link at the top of my show description so you can check out InstaClubHub and see for yourself how it is we help people to massively grow their Instagrams. Inconsistency, it's a big one. You need to post more often. The consistency is so important, and it's just a practice. Here's another thing we're seeing happening on Instagram, and that is a less produced reel. We're finding that Instagram and other platforms are really favoring content that isn't so highly edited. Now, it still needs a hook. You still need to grab people's attention in a matter of less than a second. But we are finding you don't have to have as many jump cuts, as many fancy graphics, etc. It is much more, people are looking for authenticity and longer content. Longer content. We think this is going to be a trend. So keep an eye out for that. I find that to be refreshing. I feel overwhelmed by every single swipe is a new piece of content and a new reel and a crazy transition and editing and captions and flying logos and all these things where I'm like, what even is this? And so I'm really excited about the fact that this is the way we're trending. So get ahead of it. Okay, this one is going to sting a little bit. The bad content. Bad content. So even though we're less produced content is seeming to kind of take hold right now, that doesn't mean that you can have poor content. And things that are categorized as poor content would be poor lighting, poor audio, no hook, an unclear point to the content. Like, what's the point of the content? Is it to make me laugh? Is it to be entertaining? Is it to educate? Is it to make me comment? Is it to make me think? Like, what's the point of the content? Is it worth people's time? Okay. So even though we're seeing a trend towards less highly produced content, it still needs to be really good. And this is not like something some of you want to hear, but the truth is it's harder. There's so much more competition, right? Everybody and your grandma has an Instagram account, maybe multiple accounts. We're all trying to consume less content. So that means we're trying to spend less time on Instagram, and then there's TikTok, and then there's YouTube, and then there's X, and then there's LinkedIn, and then there's YouTube Shorts. There's all these places. So people's time is divided. That means if you have an opportunity to snag someone's attention for a split second, listen, it still has to be good. You still have to have a hook. It still has to be bright. Bright content is one of the probably most important things I can tell you need to do with your content. I see so many people who it's poorly lit. Invest in a light if you're going to talk directly to your camera. Use things that people are attracted to. It doesn't have to be highly produced, but it still has to be great content. Also, that would include, are you posting on your niche? So there's, this weekend, I did a little survey of some of the bigger accounts that I follow, some of the accounts that are over 1 million followers. I looked at accounts that had over 500,000 followers, and I wanted to see which ones, accounts that I've been following for a very long time. And I wanted to see which of these accounts is still getting a lot of traction and which ones have fallen off, right? And what I noticed is that there are some accounts that you would swear that they bought their followers because I seriously, I looked at an account that had over 500,000 followers and they had 8 likes. And I'm like, has this person bought their following? I mean, this is the only way that I could just understand like why they would have so few likes, right? But as I scrolled through their content, I'm like, they have so few likes because their content is horrible. It's off niche. It's all over the place. It has bad audio, bad lighting. They're inconsistent. And when that happens, when you're not using hooks, when you're not using closed captions, listen to what I'm about to say, you guys. When you do that, it's not as sticky. So even your existing followers, they might see that and they're like, they might have seen it and they didn't like it. If they don't like it, Instagram shows it to fewer people. And then that same content creator is like, I'm just going to double down on what was working for me like 3 years ago. And then they post something else and even fewer of their followers like the content. It feels like a shadow ban. It's not a shadow ban. This is just Instagram saying like, sorry, people don't like this. It's not worth people's time. So Instagram knows that we don't want to spend a lot of time on the app. They're not going to risk putting a piece of content in front of any of us that doesn't hold our attention. Listen to what I just said. It's got to be good. It's so important. It's got to hook them in the first couple of seconds. It's got to show people closed captions. Most people are watching their content on mute. You've got to make sure that you're close enough that you're showing eye contact. You've just got seconds. And if that content isn't good enough, people they're just, even if they watch it once, if they don't like it, if they don't engage, it's going to show up to fewer people. Is your post clear? Is it concise? Does it maintain people's attention? Are you following the rule of thirds, which is framing? Is your text properly spaced? Instagram is going to help you with this, you guys. So many of you are where you're putting your text, it's disappearing on certain people's phones. Like we all have, every single one of us watching right now has a different size phone, right? And so Instagram will show you where your text is going to show up and if it's going to be off the screen for the most part, but not on every phone. So when in doubt, make sure that you're keeping your text aligned. It doesn't need to be at an angle that's hard for people to read. It needs to be easy for people to read, easy for people to take in, and it needs to be on their screen. Because if it's hanging off the screen, it just feels like you're not quite sure how to use the app, to be honest. Okay. And remember closed captions. Like I said, we're watching, we don't want to sit in a room with our volume up. And I mean, that's so rude. Some people do it, but it's so rude. And most people are watching their phones on silent. They turn the volume on if we can grab their attention with closed captions. So lack of variability. And by lack of variability, I mean every single one of your posts kind of looks like the same thing. So there's a gal who I follow who films every piece of content. It would be like as if I filmed every single reel right here. And this was always my background. I was always wearing a black shirt. I always had used a black mic. And then every single reel was just a different variation of a talking head. You look at that page and if you're a new person, you're going to look and go, oh, it's all the same. It's all the same. There's no variation. So when we say variation, we mean different types of media. That means a carousel, a meme, a reel, a photo carousel, video carousel. It means changing things up so that when people look at your page, they see regardless of what type of subject matter you post on, it doesn't all look the same. It looks different. Okay. So if they're all only educational or if they all have the same look and feel, that's going to minimize the number of people who want to follow you. So you got to mix it up. Number 6 is using an outdated strategy. You don't even want to get me started on this. I know that you get DMs from people saying like, hey, I can get you real followers. They probably are real followers, but they are either real followers who have been stolen from an account, or they are people who are in an engagement pod. You never, listen to me, you never under any circumstances want to buy engagement, which would be comments, likes, or followers, because all you have is your credibility. It is my pet peeve. I think it's criminal. I think it's very deceptive. And I think it's going to damage, not only will it damage your reach on Instagram, it's going to damage your reputation. I recently had a guest come to speak on my podcast. And I'm going to tell you the story. And she goes, I got this message from this guy. He's a, really well-known doctor. He's got a huge podcast, and he has over 1.2 million followers. But I would have to fly myself out to be on this podcast, and just like it's tough with the kids. But I really feel like this is a great opportunity. I said, "Who is it?" She gives me the name. I look him up. Followers are all bought. The followers are all bought. Now we have a service that allows us to put a name in, and I can see what percentage of the followers are real. Now, any big count is going to have between 15 to 20% of their followers. So if you're an account that has over 100,000, you are likely going to have, just get this, you're probably going to have between 15 to 20% of your followers that aren't even real. It's true for me. It's true for just about anyone with over 100,000 followers. And that is because these bot services, they will follow you to try to get your attention, try to get you to engage, try to get your followers to engage with them. It's a spammy tactic. But almost everyone has a certain percentage of followers who are fake followers. So, but guess what fake followers do? What they don't do. They're never going to buy from you. So if you're buying fake followers, you're deceiving people about your influence. And I think that's really going to hurt your credibility in the long run. And I don't recommend you do it because it's going to hurt your reach on Instagram. Don't buy anything. Do this the right way. Don't do that. Don't do the follow, unfollow. If someone says like, hey, we're doing this big group of us, it's like 50 of us, and we're all going to follow each other. Don't do that. Don't do the follow, unfollow tactic. That does not work either. If you're just using trending audios, that was really working very well for quite some time. Now it's still working, but it should not be your only tactic. Also, be careful you're not always saying just like read the caption. Sometimes you've got to give them all the information in the reel because people don't like to read. You know that, right? I think we've probably covered this so many times, but just in case you're new here, it's really, really outdated to have a profile feed where everything is matchy-matchy. It's like black, then white, then black, then white, then black, then white, like a grid, or everything looks the same, or everything's color-coded. Yeah, that just doesn't appeal to the average Instagram viewer, so you don't want to do that. It's kind of outdated. And then, of course, you don't need to rely on hashtags. These are all pretty outdated strategies. Okay. Number 7 is giving up too soon. Growth takes time, y'all. It just does. If it happened overnight, everybody would have success. But it's persistence that really pays off. It's persistence that allows your message to get some traction. Here's what else it does. It helps you to refine your message. If you give up on your niche too soon, you'll never really figure out like how you could have dialed it down more. And the best way to do that, here's my extra bonus tip, is get in your comments. Notice what people are asking about. Notice what people are responding to. Like, for example, I posted in one of my reels, it wasn't about castor oil, but I mentioned that I was putting castor oil on my legs to make them shine. And the video was about like living your best life and still enjoying yourself and your husband after 50. And I looked in my comments, and there were a significant number of people asking about the oil. I'm like, that's really interesting. That's what people were very interested in. So I used that data, that input, that consensus, and I thought, well, I'm going to make a video just about castor oil and relate it to my niche. I did that, and it blew up. I got so many new followers from that post. Now, I would not have known that if I'd given up early or if I wasn't in my chat, if I wasn't looking at the comments, if I wasn't responding to direct messages, if I wasn't taking note of like, what are people asking me about? So, just take advantage of all the information that's right there in front of you on Instagram. Don't be discouraged. New accounts are just like even an old account, sometimes it goes stale. You've got to be persistent. You've got to double down and make sure that things are like really top quality. They're grabbing people's attention, that you're really niche down. Pay attention to all of the things that we talked about and implement them. There's 7 things you need to make sure that you're doing. Thank you so much, you guys. Thanks for being here. I really do appreciate you. Bye.